welcome back to my channel, and today is our Sunday series, Ask Me Anything. This video is a little bit special because today we'll be focusing on Singapore Airlines. Yes, today is Singapore special. I would like to say a special thank you to Anita, who has actually put a list of questions for me to actually address today, and this is actually going to cover a lot of questions that all of you have asked me as well. So we'll be covering everything from when you join Singapore Airlines and what happens in the training, how long is the training, the accommodation, the salary, and the whole training process basically, and a lot more questions that you all have asked me. I will try and address them along the way. So today let's focus on Singapore Airlines. So first and foremost, I know that all of you are very eager to know what happens after the interview. So usually once you clear all the interview processes with Singapore Airlines and you go through the medical checkup, you are invited to join the training. And if you're staying out of Singapore, basically they will send you the air ticket to fly to Singapore on a specific date to join the training. But if you're in Singapore, they will just tell you when the joining date is. Now, what happens when you come from overseas? I'm going to be covering two questions here. For people, of course, who stay in Singapore, most of the time you stay with your family, so you don't really need to have an accommodation. So when the training starts, basically the whole training is for about 3 to 4 months, and it's going to be a regular 9 to 5, which does get extended sometimes, and we'll share that later with you. But for people who are actually coming from overseas, for example, India, Japan, Indonesia, Korea, or Thailand, what happens is Singapore Airlines gives you the accommodation for about 2 weeks, if I'm not wrong. That's the current information that I have. And then within these 2 weeks, basically, you have to find your own accommodation. And during this time, basically, the training would have actually already started. And at the same time, you have to find your own accommodation. But do not worry, whenever you come from overseas, usually one of the representatives from that particular country, which is flying with Singapore Airlines, would come to receive you at the airport, and they will brief you with the whole process. They will help you with the medical checkup. They will take you through the necessary processes. People, what they do is when they come in a batch together, then they would end up staying together, and that's what I did. I used to stay with 4 of my batch girls, which were all from India, definitely different parts of India, and it was really exciting because we used to cook together, we used to learn together, we used to share a lot of stuff together. So it's definitely a great experience. I was sharing a room with another girl, and I was paying about $500, and this is about 10 years back. So definitely the market has gone up, and at this point in time the rentals can be anything from 700 to 1,000 Singapore dollars. So it really depends what you're looking for, whether you're okay to share the room, whether you want the room all by yourself. Now, coming to the training itself, the training usually would last for about 3 to 4 months, as I told you guys, and usually will be put in different batches. So in your batch there will be different nationalities. The training would definitely comprise of everything they need you to know, from customer service to hospitality to F&B to safety to security to first aid, and of course there will be a lot of tests along the way. So you have to ensure that you clear those tests, and you have to put your best foot forward, because trust me, as simple as this may sound, but Singapore Airlines is very thorough with its training, and it's for a reason. I mean, when you see a Singapore Airlines crew, you can't really pick a flaw, can you? Now let's talk about the medicals. So the medicals are primarily the same for both Singaporeans and people who are coming from overseas. The only difference is when you're coming from overseas, you will go through some medical tests in your country as well. So if you're coming from Indonesia, India, Korea, Thailand, Japan, you will be required to do some medical tests in your country, and then when you come to Singapore, you will have to go through a series of medical tests again. And for Singaporeans, of course, you will be put through the medical test as well. I will be making a separate video where I'm going to talk about what exactly are these medical tests very shortly. But again, as long as most of the conditions are normal in terms of you're physically able, your skin is clear, and there are no medical issues in particular, you will be good to go. So do not really worry about it that much. Let's talk about very important question: salary. During your training days, They only pay you a certain amount, which is good to definitely cover for overseas people, their accommodation and the rest of the things. But of course, you have to be a bit minimalistic, so you can't really like spend too much. But yes, you will be able to see the salary which Singapore Airlines features on their website that says about 4,000 to 5,000 only once you start flying. So during these 3 to 4 months of training, you will only be given basic salary. Just to give you an estimate as to what my average pay was when I joined, was somewhere about 12 to 1,300 Singapore dollars. Because I wasn't flying at that point in time, there was no transportation allowance, there was no laundry allowance. However, once I started flying, of course, the rest of the allowance came in. I'll go into the details of how the salary is being calculated, because definitely every airline keeps changing its rules in terms of whether they pay you the transportation cost, whether they pay you the laundry cost, whether they pay you any other extra cost at the time of training, or even when you start flying. And of course, the salary in terms of the basic has also gone up. As I mentioned, my basic was about 12 to 1,300, but at this point in time, I think the basic is anything between 15 to 1,600 Singapore dollars. But again, don't count me on this, because let Singapore Airlines tell you as to what is the exact salary that you will be getting, because definitely it keeps changing depending upon what the airline decides, and of course what their rules are. So that is something that you will definitely know once you join the airline, depending upon what is their current process and procedure. For my overseas friends, it's definitely advisable to have some money in your bank account. So of course, if there is anything that you need to spend on, you have some spare money with you. And for my information at this point in time, if you join the airlines, you have to sign a 2-year bonded contract with the airline, which means that you cannot leave before 2 years. If you decide to leave before 2 years, you have to pay a certain amount of money to Singapore Airlines. And also, just to let you know, if you do not clear your training, you have to pay a certain amount of money to Singapore Airlines, because they've invested so much of time. But they will give you all this information once they ask you to sign the contract. So you just have to be very, very careful to read the contract very carefully before you sign it. Some of the benefits that you definitely do get is the free air ticket, and definitely the air ticket that you get for yourself for staff travel. So the free ticket that you get for yourself, you can use it for yourself or for your dependents. And the staff travel ticket that you get, you can also use it for yourself or for your dependents. And of course, there is a number to the staff travel and the dependent staff travel tickets that you get as well. You do get medical coverage depending upon certain do's and don'ts and certain categories. But having said that, definitely it's very important as a flying crew to maintain your health and taking care of yourself. And of course, you will know all that information once you start flying. However, during the 3 to 4 months of training for the overseas candidates, you are actually told that you're not allowed to go back to your home country, because obviously the only offs that you have is during the weekends, which is Saturday and Sunday, and it's not really possible for you to fly over unless there is an emergency. So for these 3 to 4 months, you would not be able to see your family or your parents. But of course, once you start flying, depending upon where you're employed from and how basically your flights are rostered, but of course, when they hire people from a particular country, for example, when they hire from Japan, they will definitely put you on Japanese routes more. If they hire you from India, they'll definitely put you on Indian routes more. So again, depending upon where you're from and where your parents are, it depends when you, for example, if you're from India and you have a Delhi flight, if your family is in Delhi, you definitely get to see them. But if your family is a little further away from Delhi, you might not be able to see them, because there is certain regulation in terms of the number of kilometers that you're allowed to travel away from where you're stationed in a particular country as well, or in a particular state as well. But again, let's not really get into those kind of details, because you will definitely know all that once you start flying as well. Now let's talk about basically the amount of money that you would be required to actually spend when you're in that training process, because I understand that because as I said, the salary is only the basic salary. You will definitely have to spend some amount of money on the cosmetics and basically your skin care, your hair care, because let's understand that every day you'll be putting a lot of makeup, every day you'll be putting a lot of hair gel, because when you go to the training, you really have to go very, very properly dressed. You have to go with full makeup. There is actually a grooming check which is conducted on a daily basis. So yes, you will have to invest some sort of money in the cosmetics. Of course, there is a grooming instructor, and there is a huge grooming guide that you need to follow as well. So based on what the grooming instructor's advice is in terms of what makeup you can use, what colors can you use, you might have to invest some sort of money in buying makeup for yourself. And of course, I would definitely advise you to spend some money in getting good skincare, getting good hair care for yourself, and of course getting good body care for yourself, because once you start flying up in the air, it can be very, very dry. You're exposed to radiation, and of course there's a lot more in terms of the physical exposure that you do to your skin, your hair, your face, your body. So you definitely want to minimize it in the long run. So get into the habit of using good products, good quality products from the beginning, so you'll be able to have healthy skin, healthy lifestyle throughout your flying career. Again, in terms of taking care of your skin, your hair, your body, I would definitely advise you to not spend a lot in terms of doing spa treatments or doing hair treatments. I usually believe in doing healthy living. So for me, I promote a lot of healthy things that you can actually do that are homemade. Like in my last Instagram post, I talked about how you can actually use avocado to moisturize your skin. So go ahead and check that out. And yeah, you can actually do a lot of simple things at home. You don't really have to spend a lot of money by going and doing all those expensive hair treatments or spa treatments to actually take care of your body. You just have to make sure you do the right things, Google the right stuff, or watch my videos to find out as to how you can stay healthy. Get a little more detail into how your flying schedule and rosters is going to be like. Of course, there's a lot of different flights depending upon whether you're flying short haul, long hauls, ultra long haul, or medium range flights. And of course, depending upon the aircraft that you get trained in as well, because not all aircrafts are designed to fly longer durations, and it really depends on basically how Singapore Airlines trains you. Based on all of this, basically your rosters might have different flights. And of course, not every flight is a layover, because from Singapore to Kuala Lumpur, for example, the flight is only about an hour. So definitely there will be no layover in Kuala Lumpur. But for example, you're flying to the United States, then there'll definitely be a layover. And the layover actually depends on the flights itself. And again, the rosters really depend where you're from as well. So if you're from overseas, depending upon whether they require you on certain routes, the rosters would be actually assigned to you in that particular way. But from what I understand, usually when they hire you from overseas, for example, India, Japan, they will want you to fly on those sectors because they want you to cater to those particular passengers more. But of course, for the crew that are from Singapore itself, you will be given fair share of flights. It really depends on the airline itself. When they basically hire you, and depending upon what contract they ask you to sign. In terms of the rest period that you have on a given flight, also again depends on what sectors are you flying, because there are a certain number of hours which are called flight duty period. If I go into that kind of detail, it's going to be very, very technical. So do not worry about all of this. You will be given the required rest that you actually need when you're doing a long haul flight. But of course, when you're doing a short haul flight, for example, if you're doing a Hong Kong turn, which is maybe 3 hours or 3.5 hours to Hong Kong, and coming back from Hong Kong to Singapore is another 3.5 hours. There will be no rest period, because this is actually considered a short flight. So this information would definitely be shared with you once you start flying, as to what is the flight duty period, and what is the number of hours that you need to fly to get minimum number of rest. And of course the number of off days that you will be given depending upon your rosters. But be rest assured, you will be given adequate rest between the flights. Even when you're on the flights, if you need to have certain amount of rest, which they deem fit according to the authorities and the safety and security rules that are basically applicable. Okay, so let's talk about the income tax. Everybody has to pay a tax, so the company usually processes the tax for you, so you don't really have to worry about it. It's a very automated system. They will be applying for the automatic tax deduction, and it automatically happens with your salary. But I'm not going to be sharing with you what percentage it is, because it really depends on what are you earning in terms of your commission, your salary. Of course, the bracket is different depending upon how much do you earn. So you can definitely look up that information online once you join the airline and you start earning your bonuses, your commission. Another critical thing that I want you guys to take note of is Singapore Airlines is very, very particular about its image. So even when you're in training, you have to be really, really particular about using your hand phones, smoking, or dressing appropriately. All that is really, really, really important for Singapore Airlines. And even when you start flying, they have certain rules. For example, you're not allowed to use your phone while you're walking in the uniform. You have to really go stand in a corner if you want to take a phone call. By right, you shouldn't, but if there is an emergency and if you want to take a phone call, you have to go to a corner to do that. And they have certain rules when it comes to smoking. They have certain rules that you have to dress appropriately, especially when you're overseas. So you can't really walk around in your shorts and just do whatever you want. I do not mean to frighten you guys, but please do remember that this job is not just about glamour, travel and leisure. Because when I ask people why do they want to join airlines, most people tell me it's because they love to travel. So you also have to remember that it is a job and you have to do that job well, because that's what Singapore Airlines is famous for doing their job well and taking care of their passengers on the flights. So I really hope that I was able to answer all your questions, and if you have any more questions, do let me know. I will try and take them up, and definitely keep watching the Sunday series, because I'll be sharing a lot more information, not just for Singapore Airlines, but a lot of other airlines, and all the questions that you keep sending me. Don't worry, I will be addressing them, whether they're on my Instagram, my Facebook, my email, or even on YouTube. So keep me posted with all the questions, and I'll try my best to answer all of them in the coming series. But for that, you have to stay tuned and keep watching it. And of course, if you're interested in joining my personal coaching, do let me know. Just drop me an email. I will be starting my group online classes very, very soon as well. I will let you guys know. And in the meantime, do remember to subscribe to the channel. Do remember to press the notification bell so you can be updated with the upcoming videos. And of course, stay pretty, stay handsome, and love you guys. Bye.